If you're new to Ask Reddit cheating drama, make sure to subscribe and like the video. It only takes a few seconds, but it really motivates us to create more crazy cheating stories. Now, let's get into the story. I didn't mean to fall in love with someone else. I only meant to be seen. There's something terrifying about being invisible while someone looks right at you. My husband Michael has beautiful eyes, steel blue, sharp, the kind you'd never think could look through someone. But they did. They looked through me for years. I used to be the center of his world. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. We used to talk until 2 in the morning about things that didn't matter. Now, we barely speak about things that do. This morning, I poured him coffee, and he didn't even notice the chipped mug I'd broken and glued back together. He didn't notice the new blouse I bought. He didn't notice my silence, but he notices now that everything is ruined, now that the truth has cracked open like a rotten fruit between us. He sees everything, every tremble in my voice, every pause in my breath, every lie I once told dressed as a casual remark. It wasn't just the affair that broke us. It was the slow erosion, the 1,000 moments of I'm fine when I wasn't. The nights he chose his laptop over my hands, the birthdays he forgot, the intimacy we traded for efficiency, and then Daniel came along. But I'll get to him. Right now, I'm sitting on the edge of our bed, my bed now, technically, staring at the place where his suitcase used to be. The closet is half empty. The silence is thicker than ever, but not the same kind. This one is final. Not heavy with waiting, but hollow with absence. I suppose this is what it feels like at the end of a storm. Quiet. But everything's broken. You want to know how it started? You want to know how a good woman does a terrible thing? Then let me tell you. But I warn you, this is not a love story. This is a confession. Michael wasn't always this distant. There was a time when his laughter filled a room and pulled mine out of hiding. When he used to kiss the back of my hand just because. When Sunday mornings meant burnt pancakes, unbrushed hair, and his head resting on my lap while we watched reruns of old movies neither of us really liked. We were in love. I know we were, but love, I've learned, is not a fixed thing. It doesn't sit still. It either grows or it dies slowly while you pretend not to notice the smell. Our 10th anniversary passed like a dentist appointment. Scheduled, mensured, brief, forgettable. He sent flowers. I don't think he even knew that lilies make me sneeze. He was always working, always tired, always distracted, and I became the woman who stopped asking. I didn't want to be a burden, so I carried everything silently. The loneliness, the resentment, the quiet shame of feeling unwanted. We still made love sometimes, but even that became a performance, a rhythm learned by muscle memory. His eyes were often closed. Mine were often open. We didn't fight. Fighting takes energy. Fighting takes care. We just drifted. Polite smiles. Empty. How was your day? Exchanges. I think he thought everything was fine simply because I never screamed. But I wasn't fine. I was shrinking. There was a night, I remember it so vividly. I stood in the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Not to fix my hair or put on makeup, just to see if I was still there. I stared for a long time, waiting to feel something. Beautiful, worthy, real. All I felt was tired. That night, Michael came home late. He kissed me on the forehead like I was his sister and fell asleep before I could even speak. I lay there for hours, beside a man I used to dream about, and realized I'd never felt more alone. And then, the next day, Daniel Harris walked into the teacher's lounge. He said, "You look like someone who sees too much and says too little." I should have walked away. I should have laughed. Instead, I looked him in the eye and said, "You have no idea." But he did. He saw me. Daniel Harris was nothing like Michael. Where Michael was quiet and calculated, Daniel carried an ease about him, as if he belonged wherever he stood. He walked into the staff lounge like he'd been there forever, but looked at everyone like they were brand new, especially me. He didn't flirt, not in the way men usually do. He noticed. The first thing he said to me was, "Do you always sit in the corner like that? Or is today just particularly hard?" I looked up from my half-drunk coffee, stunned. I hadn't said a word to anyone all morning. "I'm fine," I lied. He smiled, just the corner of his mouth. "No, you're not." I hated that he saw through me so easily, and I loved it. That's how it began. Not with a kiss, not with a touch, but with a look. One that said, "I see the parts of you no one else even bothers to search for." In the weeks that followed, our conversations became regular, unscheduled, but expected. Passing comments turned into longer chats in the hallway, then coffee, then lunches behind closed doors in his office. Nothing inappropriate, at least not technically, not yet. He remembered things, that I liked my coffee strong with too much sugar, that I wore my mother's necklace on days I needed strength, that I kept books in my bag I was too shy to recommend to anyone else. Michael hadn't asked me what I was reading in years. At first, I told myself it was harmless. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just talking, just feeling heard. There's no crime in that, right? But then came the night of the parent-teacher conference. I stayed late to organize some notes. He stayed too. We ended up sitting on the edge of his desk, laughing about something that I can't even remember now. What I do remember is the silence that followed. It wasn't awkward. It was charged. The kind of silence that wraps around you and dares you to move. He reached out and brushed a hair from my face. I didn't stop him. I didn't even breathe. He said quietly, "You don't have to do this." And I whispered, "But I want to." We didn't kiss that night, but we both knew we would. That's the most dangerous kind of intimacy, the kind you justify before it even happens. The kind you crave more for how it makes you feel about yourself than the other person. Daniel made me feel alive. And after so long of just surviving, that felt a lot like love. It happened on a Thursday. The day had been long. Meetings, grading, endless questions from tired students who mirrored my own exhaustion. I stayed after school to finish lesson plans. So did Daniel. I don't know if either of us really needed to. Maybe we were just waiting for an excuse to be alone. His office door was closed. The air between us had changed. He asked how I was holding up. I told him I didn't know anymore. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You deserve more than this." I wanted to laugh, to push him away, to tell him he had no right to say that. But instead, I asked him softly, "Then why does it feel like too much and not enough all at once?" And then he kissed me. It wasn't a movie kiss. No fireworks, no music. Just breath, shaky, hungry, and the feeling of two people clinging to a lie they both wanted to believe. My back hit the office door. His hands were warm, gentle, but I couldn't stop shaking. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to disappear into him just to remember what it felt like to be wanted again. When it was over, we didn't speak for a long time. I sat on the edge of his desk, clothes disheveled, fingers still trembling. I didn't feel like a woman reborn. I felt like a vase someone had glued together, pretty from far away, but cracking under the surface. Daniel reached for my hand. "Are you okay?" I nodded. I lied. I went home that night and made dinner like nothing happened. Michael told me about a new project at work. I nodded in the right places, smiled on cue. When he kissed me goodnight, I tasted nothing. That was the beginning of the double life. By day, I was Elena Wright, teacher, wife, capable, composed. By night, I was something else, someone else. a woman addicted to the feeling of being chosen. I told myself it was temporary, just a moment, just a phase. But lies don't stay small for long. They grow teeth. And soon, mine would come back to bite me in a ways I never saw coming. The first time was stupid, careless. Daniel had left a shirt in my car. He'd spilled coffee on it after one of our meetings turned into a stolen afternoon in a motel 20 minutes out of town. We laughed about it at the time. He peeled it off, tossed it into the back seat, and kissed me like the world wasn't burning around us. I was supposed to throw it away, but I forgot. Or maybe, if I'm being honest, I wanted to forget. A few days later, Michael opened the car trunk to look for an old umbrella. I heard the silence before I heard his voice. "Elena," he called too calmly. "Whose shirt is this?" My mouth dried. My heartbeat thundered. "Oh," I said quickly. It's Daniel's. He asked me to drop it at the cleaners. He spilled coffee at school." Michael looked at me for a moment, long and searching, then nodded. "Right. Makes sense." He believed me, or at least pretended to. That night, he held me a little tighter than usual in bed, and I stared at the ceiling, suffocating beneath his arms. The second time nearly broke me. I left my phone on the kitchen counter while I was taking a shower. Stupid again. Daniel had texted something reckless, something I should have deleted hours ago. When I found out, Michael was holding my phone, his face unreadable. "Who's Daniel calling my E?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I laughed. I actually laughed. A ridiculous, strained sound. Oh God, it's a running joke at work. He calls everyone some ridiculous nickname. I think he's just trying to be funny. Inappropriate, maybe. I'll talk to him. Michael watched me, eyes narrowed. "You sure there's nothing else going on?" I stared at him, at the man I had once promised never to lie to. "No," I whispered. "Nothing's going on." He said nothing for a long time, then handed me the phone and walked away. I threw up in the bathroom 15 minutes later. The third time was the worst. Not because he confronted me, but because he didn't. It was at the school's annual holiday party. Staff, spouses, laughter echoing off the gymnasium walls. Daniel was across the room, looking polished, calm, unreadable as ever. His wife, Julia, stood beside him, elegant and charming. Everything I wasn't in that moment. Michael was talking to another teacher, drink in hand, smiling, but then he turned and our eyes met. And in that second, I saw it. He knew. Maybe not every detail, maybe not the hotel rooms or the stolen mornings, but he knew enough. And he said nothing. He came over later, kissed my cheek, and said quietly, "You looked like you needed rescuing." I nearly burst into tears right there. I wanted him to scream, to accuse, to demand the truth so I could finally stop pretending. But he didn't. He just kept being the man who loved me, even when I stopped being someone worth loving. I wish I could say those close calls woke me up, that they forced me to see the damage, to pull away, to repent. But the truth, they made it worse. Because each time I got away with it, I believed I still had time. Time to fix it, time to decide, time to be better. But time is never merciful when you waste it. And soon, it would run out in the most cruel, ironic way imaginable. I thought I was the one holding the match, but I never saw the fire coming from the other side. It started with small things. Michael's sudden calm, the way he stopped asking questions, the way he started going to the gym again. New cologne on his collar, a new watch, a shift in his posture. He wasn't angry, he wasn't suspicious. He was different. I told myself it was relief, that maybe he was finally reconnecting with me, that maybe my guilt had somehow summoned a better version of the man I used to love. I even told Daniel I wanted to take some space. He didn't fight me. He just nodded and said, "Maybe that's for the best." And in his voice, I heard the first echo of the end. For the first time in months, I tried. I cooked dinner. I planned a weekend away. I reached for Michael's hand in the car, and he didn't pull away. For a moment, I believed we had a chance. Until I found the earring. It was tucked into the corner of our bedside drawer, where I kept old birthday cards and loose change. A pearl stud, delicate, not mine. I held it in my palm for a long time. My heartbeat was strangely steady. I knew this game. I had played it too well. That night, I didn't say anything. I watched him undress. He kissed my forehead. I looked him in the eyes and whispered, "Are you sleeping with someone else?" He didn't blink. Yes? Just like that. No drama, no defense, just the truth, sharp, clean, and final. And then the second blow. It's Julia. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound that echoed against the bedroom walls like a slap. Daniel's wife? Julia? He nodded. You're not the only one who felt invisible. For a moment, I couldn't feel my own body. I just stood there, watching my world collapse, not in flames, but in icy, slow-motion precision. We were 4 people orbiting each other in lies. Touching, colliding, destroying. I had convinced myself I was the center of the betrayal, but I wasn't. I was just another piece in a symmetrical disaster. We didn't scream. We didn't fight. We just stopped pretending. The next morning, Michael moved into the guest room. I canceled a parent meeting. Daniel avoided my eyes in the hallway. Julia left a scarf in my mailbox. No note. Just silk and silence. The affair was over, but the damage had just begun. You'd think the collapse would be loud. A door slamming, a scream, a public scene. But it wasn't. It was quiet, like a house finally giving in to rot. It creaked, and then it sank. The first thing to go was my sleep. Nights became hours of staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, every lie, every touch, every moment I could have walked away but didn't. Guilt doesn't scream. It whispers, and mine never shut up. At school, Daniel wouldn't look at me. We passed each other like strangers. I kept expecting some confrontation, some moment where we'd say, "What now?" But there was nothing, just silence, and the knowledge that we'd ruined too much to even begin again. Julia pulled him out of the school 3 weeks later. He resigned for family reasons. I heard she followed him to some town upstate, and they were working things out. Michael and I weren't. He told me he'd be filing for separation, not in anger, just calmly, as if our entire marriage had been a project he'd decided not to finish. He didn't move back into our bedroom. He didn't yell. He just left a key on the kitchen counter one day and said he'd come back for the rest of his things on Sunday. And he did. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the way everyone looked at me, like they knew. I could feel it in the break room, in the parent meetings, in the way people's voices dropped when I entered a room. Rumors have a way of blooming in places like schools, quietly, quickly, viciously. The head of the board called me in for a chat. They used words like optics and moral conduct. They said maybe it was best if I took a leave of absence. So I left. No marriage, no job, no Daniel. Just a woman alone in her own skin, wondering how she'd come to feel like a guest inside her own life. Some nights I walk past the school just to remind myself it was real, that I was once someone who inspired students, who was good at her job, who made vows and meant them, who laughed, who trusted. Now I can't even trust my own reflection. You think you're the villain until you get betrayed. Then you realize betrayal isn't a title, it's a mirror. And we were all just reflections of each other's worst decisions. Some mornings I wake up and forget. Just for a second, I stretch my arms across the bed, expecting warmth, breath, another body beside me. And then the cold space answers back, and I remember I'm alone. The house is quieter now, not peaceful, just empty. No keys jingling at the door, no laptop humming on the dining table, no footsteps from the shower. Just the creak of old wood and the steady drip of a leaky faucet I haven't found the energy to fix. Michael lives somewhere across town now. I heard he moved in with Julia eventually. A small, poetic cruelty the universe didn't even try to hide. Sometimes I wonder if he ever loved me, truly. Other times, I wonder if I ever deserved to be loved at all. People say we make mistakes, that we're human, that we fall. But I didn't fall. I walked, step by step, choice by choice, into a fire I lit myself. And now there's nothing left but ash. I miss Daniel in strange ways. Not the man, not even the affair, but the feeling of being seen, of being heard, of mattering to someone. But that feeling was borrowed. And like all debts, it came back to collect with interest. Sometimes I reread old messages we sent just to see who I used to be. Not the words, but the tone. The woman behind them. She seemed bolder, lighter. But when I look closer, I can see the cracks forming even then. She wanted to be loved so badly. She mistook attention for affection. She mistook desire for worth. I'm not looking for redemption. I don't need anyone to say I'm forgiven. I'm not. What I need is to learn how to live with myself, to walk past mirrors and not look away, to stop waiting for a man to make me feel whole, to feel my own hands and know they are enough. Some days I still lie to myself, but fewer than before. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting, not moving on, but learning how to sit beside your shame without letting it speak for you. It wasn't the sex that broke us. It wasn't even the lies. It was the silence that grew between us until it became another person in the room. And I reached for someone else's voice, just to remember what it felt like to be alive. But in the end, I didn't just lose him. I lost her, the version of me I used to be, before I shattered her. And now, all that's left is the sound of sweeping up the pieces.